In this video, let's look at how to graph the absolute value function on the Texas Instrument calculator. Now, as always, I've got a TI-84 plus CE, but we will have something similar for other models. Now, we don't actually use the absolute value that much in mathematics, which is why it's kind of well hidden on our calculator. So let's say we do want to just graph that basic absolute value. Let's start by going to y equals, as we always do when we graph. Now, to get the absolute value, I am going to have to go to our math menu where we've got a lot of things. So let's hit math. And no matter how much you scroll down here, you will not see absolute value under that. And that's because you've got to go right to the num submenu, which is the first one here on the right. And after that, it's that very first one, ABS. So let's just go ahead and hit enter. Now, I have a newer calculator, so it will show up with those absolute value signs. However, if you have an older calculator, it is going to show up with absolute value in parentheses, at which point you would put whatever goes inside the absolute value signs inside those parentheses. So again, here I've just got that basic graph, so let's just put an X in there, and let's hit graph. And as we expect, we do get something that looks like the letter V. Let's say we want to graph something with transformations. So let's go ahead and try graphing that one. So let's come back here to y equals, and let's clear that one out. Again, we've got to be careful of the difference between minus and negative. Again, I encourage students to not use that term minus, but to think of it instead as either a negative or subtraction. That is a negative number. I'm not subtracting it from anything. So let's hit negative 2. There's my absolute value sign. So now let's go into my math menu. And again, go right to num. There's absolute value. So I can see that sign. This time it's subtraction. So it's x subtract 3. To get out of that absolute value sign, I'm going to hit right. And you can see my cursor's moved down to hit plus 4. Now again, if you've got that older calculator with the ABS, we'd want to put that x subtract 3 inside parentheses, but then the plus 4 outside because it's not inside that absolute value sign. And let's hit graph. Now I have another video detailing how to do transformations, but in short here, we have gone up 4, we've gone right 3, we've stretched by a factor of 2, and then that negative out in front is an x-axis reflection. Now, we've looked at how to graph. Let's look at finding zeros. And in fact, let's go ahead and find zeros for this particular one. Now again, the zeros are where we are crossing the x-axis. So I always start with my graph to give me at least an approximate idea. Looks like I've got positive 1, and then that should be 2, 3, 4, so that should be positive 5. And then let's use my table. So let's hit second graph to pull up a table. Now I might have to scroll up or down a little bit depending on what my values are. But here, again, we have a 0 anywhere that the y value is a 0, so that's what I'm looking for. And it does look like I do have x equals 1. And then scrolling down a little bit further, looks like I also have positive 5. So again, I use the graph first, and then I use that table to help me find those more precisely. Let's say those numbers are not so nice. I can use the calc menu. So if I hit second and then trace, let's go ahead and do that. Second trace to get that calc menu. Here I am looking for zeros. So I'm going to go ahead and pick option 2 where it says 0. So let's go down and hit 0 and hit enter. Now, because there might be more than one, I am going to be asked for left and right bounds. Now, we will have to do this 1, 0 at a time. So I'm going to go ahead and start with the one at negative 1. So needless to say, the left bound has to be somewhere to the left. I'm currently at 0. You'll notice I am given those coordinates as well as a cursor, just to help me see this a little bit more easily. So I'm going to go ahead and hit enter, and then I'm going to be asked for the right bound. So again, this has to be to the right of that 0, and I usually go a little bit further than I need to. I'm at not quite 2, but I'm definitely to the right of that 0 at 1. So let's go ahead and hit enter. Now mine's a newer calculator, so you can see these little lines to kind of help me see those boundaries. If you've got an older one, unfortunately those don't show up quite as well. So again, last but not least, I'm then going to be asked to guess. Now if you have 2 zeros in here, this is where it's particularly important that we make sure we're looking for the correct one, because otherwise the calculator will have trouble. Now you don't actually have to be that close if you've got the 1. I could actually guess from here. Most of my students are a bit more comfortable with moving that cursor though, until we're at approximately that 0. Again, I always tell them, if you can't get it exactly on it, that's okay. It does not have to be exact. So long as you are fairly close to it, that is more than good enough for the calculator. Again, I didn't actually have to move it at all, but most of my students like to do that. So let's go ahead then and hit enter one final time. And now it is giving me that 0. Oops, and I just hit a button I shouldn't have hit. But we were able to see 1, 0, which was the number we got earlier. Now again, you have to do this one at a time. So if I want that other 0, I'm going to have to do this again. So let's go to that calc menu again. Let's hit 0. Now I'm looking for that one. So I'm somewhere to the left of the +5, 0. So let's hit enter. And my right bound, again, I have to make sure I'm to the right. And again, I always go a little bit further just to make sure. So let's hit enter again. Again, I can see those 2 bounds. And now I said it before, I didn't actually have to move it for the guess. So this time, let's not. Let's just hit enter. There was only the 1 0 there. So my calculator was able to get that second 0 at 5. So again, you will have to do it every time for each 0. That is the one downside with this type of calculator. But when you get comfortable with it, hopefully it doesn't take too long to go through that.